be with all of you, the young company
And we are
secretaries
also
and lawyers. And I hope our 1.5 hours, next 1 hour, 130 minutes will be of some use to all of you. Now let me share the screen. I know every one of you are now getting lots of warning signals and working from home because of coronavirus. So, but there are a lot many new opportunities are also created by this. I will explain to you a little later. Now the world what we have been living is going to change for some time, creating lots of challenges as well as lots of opportunities. We professionals have to make use of the opportunities by sharpening our skills, modifying our strategies, and little bit strategizing our profession. So I'll try to tell you something on this. First, let me finish this force majeure aspect of the presentation, and then let us go into the arbitration area. Friends, all of you maybe, I think all of you are well aware of the force majeure concept, which is recognized legally by statutes in some countries, which is not recognized by statute in some countries. One of the country which is not recognizing it as a statute is India. It still remains as a contract provision only. So what is the effect? If any force majeure event happens, generally we call it as act of God. That can be, which can be neither expected or controlled by the parties is the main definition for that. That means things go beyond the control of the parties. That is the one basic aspect of force majeure. As I told you, this remains as a contract provision only in India. It is not a statutory provision. The relief what parties are getting is only a temporary relief during the force majeure period. It doesn't absolve the party from performing its duty. It absolves the party or gives a temporary relief to the party to not to comply with the obligations within that force majeure period. And when we are talking about this force majeure period, as I told you, it should be explained in the contract. When all of you know well, any court or arbitrator cannot go beyond the terms of the contract. That is very important. So force majeure definition in whatever way it is incorporated in the contract will only be relied on by the courts to evaluate whether the force majeure can be applied in a particular situation or not. And when we are talking about the force majeure situation, there are some contracts in which force majeure provision may not be there. Can they find some relief? There are some judgments, even though not directly, but indirectly we can invoke some of the contract provisions to try to get a relief for the people who are suffering due to a contract in which force majeure provision is not there. One of the provision is section 32, where we can argue that force majeure should be applied. Mr. Arya, I'm not able to hear you. Can you repeat again? Hello.
I think there was a disturbance.
Can you all hear me? Can I continue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can. Please continue.
See, this section 32 talks about contingent contracts, contingent situations. when a particular contingency happens, then only the contract can be done or it need not be done. So this is one argument you can take up in cases where your contract is not having a not having a force majeure clause. The second one is section 65, which talks about the frustration of the contract, which can be argued also because of the situation. Then the other concept what you can take about is, in the Indian Contract Act provides for a protection if there is an absolute impossibility to execute a contract. So these are the three things which can be applied for the people who are not having a force majeure clause in their contracts. But one important thing is, whenever we claim a benefit from any contractual provision, whichever part of it is possible to implement, that should be implemented to show the bona fide act of the parties. Now, in some of the contracts, if there is a force majeure event, within a particular time, you have to inform the employer or the other party by way of a notice that force majeure event happened from this period to this period. This is the proof for that. So such a notice is provided in the clause, then you need to issue that notice to get the benefit of the force majeure clause. Now, the other tests which are required to get the benefit of force majeure, we have to see. In each of the situation, there are some tests which prove that the force majeure is applicable in a particular case. As I told you, first one is the situation should be beyond reasonable control. Number two is performance must have been affected directly. We cannot show it like an indirect situation. It should show that this performance is totally not possible in that particular situation. And also you should prove, the suffering party has to prove that it took the actions which were possible. For example, in a supply contract, if somebody has to supply, let us assume, ballast to some railway company, they are not able to do it because of COVID situation. But at the same time, what they have to do is, they have to show that at least they placed orders to the supplier, paid some advances, entered into some contracts. If they are not done anything even before the preparatory situation, then they cannot get the benefit of it. And in some cases, there can be an alternate obligation execution is possible. In such a situation, at least the alternate way should be explored. If that is also not available, then you are eligible for a force majeure claim or force majeure relief. These are the main things about the force majeure I wanted to tell you. Now let me go to the arbitration part of it. If you have any questions, we can discuss in the end of the program. Now let me go through the slides. Now all of us should know the arbitration, how it came popular, why it has become popular. After Second World War, all the developed countries felt that there should be an economic balance all over the world, which can be achieved only by a kind of free trade with less restrictions and with less formalities, so that the wealth can be shared by the poor countries and the rich countries. Then the balance of political system will be there, so they can achieve world peace. All started talking about world peace after Second World War. At that time, one of the major challenges in international trade was, if a party is sending material to another country, the recovery was becoming a major challenge. Only the big companies could do, or big countries who had the muscle power could get through government pressures. And the local legal system in each country was different. Even though there was arbitration existing at that point of time, nobody was ready to go to another country to seek remedy. So there was a big stagnation. At that point of time only, to simplify the process, first effort taken by United Nations was to bring in many countries together to sign a treaty by which the countries will recognize each other with regard to the arbitration awards. That means if India is a signatory to the contract, US is a signatory to the contract, whatever arbitration awards passed from India will be recognized in US. Same way US will recognize Indian awards. I'll tell you a small example. If there is a Supreme Court decree against a party sitting in Singapore, that Supreme Court of India gives a decree in a money suit after all appeals. At that point of time, there is no way to enforce the decree as it is against a Singapore person. If you go to Singapore, they will say file a fresh suit, put it as a record, and then get your degree and execute. This is the situation with regard to the national courts. But let us say that today, one of your friend, I see his name, Arya Mehta is here. If Arya Mehta sits in an arbitration, that arbitration happens in Delhi, that he gives an award against a party sitting in New York. After 90 days of the award, the New York court will recognize Arya Mehta's award as a court decree and enforce it against the party in New York. So that is the power of arbitration today. That is the power of arbitration awards today. So the second step taken by United Nations was every country was having a different arbitration procedure, which was again creating a problem for the lawyers, for the professionals, for the parties to understand which country is having what kind of law. So a small concern from India may be exporting small quantities, $10,000, $5,000, $3,000 materials to different countries. But going and finding out the intricacies of arbitration law in each country is very difficult. So the second effort taken was to bring a uniformity among the countries. United Nations brought in a model law on international commercial arbitration. That model law was propagated among the countries. Now, 63 countries have adopted the same law. All major economies have the same law, almost same law. Even countries like China will say, we are not model law country. But if you see their provisions, it is almost same as Indian law. All the provisions are same. So you can say all the major economies today have a uniform arbitration law. And among the world, 163 countries have joined together to recognize the arbitration award with reciprocity. So there is a unified, simplified arbitration world is created. So now how we are going to advise our parties, our clients, and we also how we are going to make use of this situation. That is what we are going to see now. The arbitration starts from all of you know well, from the arbitration agreement. This is just an agreement between the parties, whoever signs a contract, saying that we don't want to go to court. We want to resolve the disputes, anything arising from the contract by way of an arbitration. Once you put it, what happens? Then court jurisdiction is excluded. Even if any party goes to court, the court will say that no, you have an arbitration clause. You go for the arbitration. This is happening all over the world. So first thing, what we have to advise our parties is, you put the arbitration clause. Then how to develop it, I will tell you a little later. How flexible this arbitration scheme, I will tell you. choice of law. There may be Indian party and a Chinese party in a contract, but they need not choose either Chinese law or the Indian law. They can go for a law of England as the administrative for the substantive law position. Same way, a party from New York and let us say from Delhi can choose the seat of arbitration as Singapore or as you can say Fiji or whichever country, wherever they want to do. So the concept of neutral law and a neutral seat shows how much is the power of the parties to contract. They can choose the law, they can choose the place of arbitration. What is the seat or the neutral seat or whatever seat we are talking about is the place of arbitration. What is the importance of the seat is two things come with that seat. One is the procedural law of that seat will be applicable to the arbitration. What is the procedural law? Procedural law of India is Arbitration and Conciliation Act. Procedural law of Singapore is International Arbitration Act of Singapore. Whichever place arbitration is going to take place, that law will govern the procedure of arbitration, not the substantive decision. Substantive decision, you can choose any other country also or same country also. That is by choice of the parties. But what comes with the seat is that country's procedural law. What is the next to come with that is the supervising jurisdiction of the courts. For example, if somebody chooses Bombay as the seat of arbitration, then the Arbitration and Conciliation Act of India will be the procedural law, and the courts in Bombay will have the jurisdiction to supervise the courts. What is this supervisory courts? I will tell you little later what are their powers and all. That is like you can say supervising the arbitration, because arbitration being a private process, it should not go beyond the legal limits also. There should be some limitation. So supervising courts have certain powers to, you can supervise the arbitration process. So now what we have seen arbitration agreement. We have seen the flexibility of arbitration by choosing the law, choosing the place, whatever you can do. And we have also seen that by choosing a seat, you are choosing the procedural law as well as the jurisdiction of the court, which has the supervisory powers. Now, an international arbitration clause. What all should be there in an international arbitration clause? Because there are certain important factors which have to be mentioned in an arbitration clause. Okay, we don't mention it, what will happen? If you don't mention it, somebody else will decide, either a court or a tribunal or an arbitral institution, which may not reflect the intention of the parties finally. So whenever you advise, you insist that these points have to be there. This decision you have to take in advance and put in the contract, so that nobody, the third party, need not interpret your contract. You need not unnecessarily go to court for and pay money to people like us for interpretation. So it is all within the control of the parties while drafting and signing the contract. One is seat of arbitration. They have to decide whichever seat. If it is a domestic arbitration, any place in India. If it is an international arbitration, either India or outside, whichever is the parties finally decide, they can choose. Then they can choose an arbitral institution. There are two types of arbitrations. I will tell you later. One is ad hoc arbitration. The other one is institutional arbitration. Ad hoc arbitration means everything is ad hoc. The arbitrator will decide everything. Institution arbitration means there will be an institution which will be administering the arbitration. So preferably, if it is international arbitration, choose an international arbitral institution. Third one is substantive laws. Laws by which you want the contract to be interpreted is called the substantive law. So please choose that law. And then number of arbitrators and appointment procedure. There can be one arbitrator, there can be three, there can be five. Normally, in big size contracts, we recommend three arbitrators. In normal size, single arbitrator is more than enough because you have to pay the fee also for all the three. Getting the dates is difficult, so many things are there. And mainly, you have to specify the language of arbitration. If you don't specify the language of arbitration, it can go put you into trouble. For example, we have a case in Taiwan where the parties failed to put English as the arbitration language. So, by default, the Taiwanese law says the Mandarin is the default language if the language of arbitration is not mentioned in the clause. So then we had to translate all the documents which were in English to Mandarin, and we had to engage a lawyer who had command over Mandarin. All those things are unnecessary. If you decide the language, nobody can change it later. And law governing the arbitration agreement, there are three laws you can choose. One is procedural law, which comes with the seat, substantive law, and law governing the arbitration agreement. But don't recommend parties to go for three different laws. It creates a lot of complications, even though they have the powers to do. But when you are negotiating, for example, there will be an Indian company, there will be a Swiss company. The Swiss company will insist, no, arbitration will be in Switzerland only. So the Switzerland arbitral institution will administer. The Indian party will say, no, Indian seat is better, Indian law will apply. In this negotiation, you can give one and take other. You can say that, no, arbitration will be in India, but let the substantive law be the Swiss law or English law or whatever it is. Or you can say, let it be in Singapore, but we will keep Indian law as the substantive law. So this is negotiable. So when you are advising your parties, you can help them to negotiate and finalize a reason, because everything matters cost finally. If you are moving to a foreign land, it is going to cost much more than our costing, convenience, engagement of lawyers. Everything has a cost. So if you are going to put it in London, costs are 10, 15 times more than Indian costs. If you are putting in Singapore, 5, 6 times more costly. So all these things have to be taken into consideration while deciding the arbitration agreement. I have given a small sample arbitration agreement. Any disputing arising out of the contract shall be resolved by way of arbitration under the rules of Singapore International Arbitration Center. This is the center which is decided by the parties. The arbitration tribunal shall consist of 3 arbitrators, and each party shall nominate 1 arbitrator, and the chairman of the tribunal shall be nominated by both the nominee arbitrators. The arbitration proceedings shall be seated in Mumbai, and the language of arbitration will be English. Substantive law shall be laws of United Kingdom. Procedural law shall be laws of India. Very simple, but it is a complete arbitration agreement. This is just a sample. Now let us see domestic arbitration clauses. If it is an institutional arbitration, any dispute arising out of this contract shall be resolved by way of arbitration. The place/seat of arbitration shall be New Delhi. Arbitration shall be administered by IDAC India, the arbitral institution. There shall be a sole arbitrator, and the language of arbitration shall be English. This is sufficient and complete. Ad hoc arbitration. If parties say, no, we don't want to go to institution, we will do it ad hoc. Any dispute arising out of this agreement shall be resolved by way of arbitration. The place and seat of arbitration shall be New Delhi. There shall be 3 arbitrator panel. Each party shall appoint 1 arbitrator, and the chairman of the tribunal shall be appointed jointly by both the arbitrators. This can be, here I have missed out in language, you can put language also. But the problem with ad hoc arbitration is, to appoint an arbitrator, you have to go to High Court. That is a separate procedure. If there is a sole arbitrator, then you have to go to court. That is also an expense. But if it is an institution, there will be a nominal fee charged by the institution. You can just send an email to them, explaining the disputes. They will respond to you immediately by appointing an arbitrator. Now, what is the difference between ad hoc and institutional arbitration? Parties shall resolve their disputes by way of arbitration. This one sentence also is enough for arbitration, but this is only an ad hoc arbitration. Now what happens? There will be no institution. So the arbitrator will decide. In the first hearing, he will decide how pleadings will be prepared by the parties, how filing will be prepared by the parties, what will be the fee of the arbitrator, how meetings will be organized, how arguments will happen. Everything arbitrator will decide. Sometimes there can be a lacuna also. Sometimes fees can be disproportionate to the dispute amount also. For example, some of the judges sitting in Delhi, if Supreme Court judge means he will charge 2 lakhs per day, per sitting. If it is High Court judge, they will charge 1 lakh per sitting. Your dispute amount may be, let's say, 1 crore. The sitting charge itself will take away 20-30 lakhs of this thing. But if you go to an institution, they will determine the arbitrator fee and the institution fee based on the dispute amount. If it is 1 crore, that will be less than 5 lakhs. But in an ad hoc arbitration, we don't have a control over it. And arbitral institutions have fixed rules how the whole process will happen. You can see, for example, IDAC India website, if you go and see, you can see the rules, how the whole process happens. And as I told, fees is another issue. Appointment of arbitrator also is easier in terms of institutional arbitration. Earlier, we were talking about the supervising courts. Now, let us see what are the powers of the supervisory courts. One is appointment of arbitrator is done by the supervisory court in case of disputes among the parties or if it is an ad hoc arbitration. In some cases, interim orders are also possible, but not in all cases, because interim orders have to be obtained from the place where the opposite party is having the jurisdiction. Some of the cases, it happens in the supervisory courts. Removal of arbitrators. Sometimes one of the party may feel after seeing their declaration that they are a biased arbitrator or they are disqualified arbitrator, then you have to go to the supervisory court for removal. There is another procedure which can be done by the arbitral institution if you are doing an institutional arbitration. Otherwise, you have to go to court only. Finally, challenging of the arbitration award. That also, tomorrow, one party is aggrieved by the arbitration award. Then they can challenge it only in the seat of arbitration. They cannot go to another court. Here you should see that why we are going to arbitration if they are going to again go and appeal in the court. This question will come to you and to your client also. At that time, what you should tell is, in Indian civil court system, the procedure is so complex. So for completing a original suit, it may take a couple of years or more than that. But in arbitration process, there are two types of arbitrations. One is normal arbitration has to be completed in 12 months. If you put the word fast track arbitration, then it will be completed in 6 months' time. So where there is not much of a factual disputes, like let us say financing agreement, what is the big in it? Nothing. Only whether the money is paid or not is the only issue which has to be determined. So you can put these kind of contracts, fast track proceedings will apply. If you put like that, then the arbitrator has to complete the whole process within 6 months. So when we are going to court on a civil matter, in appeals, in the first appeal, the parties can agitate it like once again like a full suit. All documents will be seen, all merits will be seen, all arguments will be seen. But while challenging an arbitration award, if it is a money award, 75% of the money has to be deposited in the court by the challenging party, number one. Number two is the court interference is very restricted only on certain technical aspects like complete perverse award, completely beyond the scope of the contract, completely disobeying the law. This kind of issues only can be agitated in an appeal against an arbitration award. So it is very restricted, and many cases appeals are disposed of very fast by the high courts. And always you recommend to your parties to choose any of the 4 metros as the seat of arbitration. There is an advantage in that. If you choose Chennai, Bombay, Delhi, or Calcutta, these 4 high courts have the original jurisdiction with them. So if the awards are challenged, it can be challenged directly in the high court. But value should be more than 2 crores. If pecuniary jurisdiction is there, they can go directly to high court, which gets a better appreciation for the arbitration proceedings. Then who can become an arbitrator? This is a question. Any graduate with 10-year experience can be an arbitrator. Any professional can be an arbitrator, including company secretaries, chartered accountants, lawyers, or engineers, technical professionals, or IT professionals. Anybody can become an arbitrator. Appointment. Who appoints the arbitrator? It can be appointed by the parties. If there is a 3-member tribunal, then you can be appointed by one of the party. The other party will appoint another one, and both of you will jointly choose the third one. So this is one way. If it is an institution, you have to file your application for empanelment. There are various institutions, and if you are having a 10 years standing in your profession, you can apply for empanelment immediately. Otherwise, if you are more younger than that, you have to wait for a little more time. And arbitration procedure. There are various trainings for arbitration procedure. There are various conferences you can attend and you can simply understand. You can go and see some arbitration proceedings by yourself, which also can help you understand how the system works. And what is required is basic understanding of law. For company secretaries, I don't think it is a problem. You know the basic framework, the law of contracts, everything. In the training, if any of you are interested in going for international arbitrations, then you can go to a website where you can find out Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. That is an institution in UK which gives a diploma as well, which also gives short-term trainings. The trainings happen in Delhi also, Bombay also, Chennai also. If you follow the website, you can understand that you can attend those trainings. And there are various levels of exams. You can appear in those exams, which includes arbitration award writing exam. If you become a fellow member, then you will be able to have a full control on the subject of international arbitration, and you can also get empaneled internationally in the international arbitral institution. And there is an institution in Cochin also, Indian Institute of Mediation and Arbitration. There are various other institutions coming up with various different types of courses. Even National Law School gives a postgraduate diploma in ADR. You can also attend that. That is a distance program. So you will be appearing only for those examinations. This will really help to also mold your profession as an arbitrator. See, arbitrator profession is little bit dominated by judges in India, but the market is going to open in a big way. Because earlier what was happening was, for example, let us take the finance area. Finance companies, let us say Reliance Finance. If you see, they will have a lack of arbitrations, running arbitrations. What they were doing was, they will take 500 cases and give to one retired judge, a district judge. He will be sending notice to every one of them and hearing that matters and giving the awards. Now, there is a bar for appointing such bulk arbitrations. One party appointing arbitrator is also not possible. Now,
Hello.
anybody else is trying to share?
Hello. Sir, presentation is not appearing.
No, that's what it is showing. Sandeep Kumar has started screen sharing. I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
If he closes, I can show it again. Okay, now I'll try.
Sir, please share again.
Yeah. So what I was telling was arbitration profession. Now what has happened is two clear bars have come in the arbitration law. One is one party nominating an arbitrator, the same arbitrator cannot be nominated more than 3 times. So there is a bar. Number two is now one party, in case of a sole arbitrator, a single arbitrator, if he is there, he cannot be appointed by one party. You must have seen some of the contracts like in National Highways Authority of India. They will say that if the contractor has any dispute, they have to write to the executive engineer of NHAI. NHAI will appoint the arbitrator. These kind of clauses were there or there in the contracts, but those clauses are not enforceable now. You can go to the court and ask the court to appoint a neutral arbitrator. They will appoint. So there is no other way for the companies except to search for new arbitration professionals. So arbitration professional, whether it is financially rewarding one, yes, it is financially rewarding one, and it depends on the size of the contracts. Now, as per Indian law, if the disputes are more than 20 crores, even the arbitrator fee is about 35 lakhs per arbitrator per case. So it depends. I don't say in every case you will get that kind of an amount, but even in smaller cases, there is a reasonable fee because the amount of time you are going to spend is not that much. You have a command over the business laws and commercial laws, so you can equip yourself to become an arbitrator. You know what happens in Singapore now? You are a team. You are 30 people. In Singapore, what will happen is Abhishek will recommend to his client Ashish as the arbitrator. Ashish will recommend to his client as Abhishek as an arbitrator. This kind of a professionally mutual understanding can help both of you. Your parties also will be benefited. You also will be benefited. So this kind of a mutual things are happening globally. So you can also try to have a network so that that network can help bring some arbitrator assignments to you. Now there are various institutions. I am a director in IDS India, so I am showing the IDS India model, how it works. There is a beautiful concept of online arbitration, which is encouraged by Government of India now. You can see the Ministry of Law and Justice website. There are about 12 institutions who are authorized to have online arbitration process. One of the institution is this IDS India. How this arbitration happens? I'll tell you first in simple terms, then I will come to the technical points. For example, your party is exporting some material to France. It may be only a $10,000, 6 lakhs. So a French company will buy it and they don't pay. Or there is a dispute in LC, so it is returned, or they are not clearing the goods. Finally, your party is not getting the money. So if they put an online arbitration process of IDS India will apply in the arbitration clause, then both the parties need not physically go to a place to do the arbitration. You can just send a mail to IDS India explaining your case. This is the amount, this is the bill, this is the proof. Then IDS India will communicate to the respondent saying that there is a case filed against you. You have to nominate your counsel. This is the online process. So they can sit there itself and defend the case. And you can sit in Delhi only and defend the case. The entire process of upload the pleadings will be done online. claim will be uploaded in the site. Once you request for the arbitrator appointment, the IDAC India, if it is institution, it will open up a case window. It will give you access to your client and your lawyer, or you, whoever is handling the case. Same way, they will give access to the arbitrator who is appointed by the institution. They will also give access to the opposite party. So both the parties will file their claim application, response, all applications, everything in that website only. Hearing will happen online, and award will be given physically and by soft copy also. So without moving from your place or from your client's office, they can handle this case. What is the benefit? If you are going to International Chamber of Commerce, if you put the class, dispute is only $10,000. You have to pay $5,000 for appointment of arbitrator itself. So it will become a futile exercise. But when you choose an institution who are doing online arbitration, if it is only 6 lakhs or 7 lakhs is the dispute, their charges will be less than 50,000 only, including the arbitrator fee, everything. So in such a situation, it will be very convenient for the parties to handle, very less cost, and young people like you will get opportunity also. So you can become an arbitrator if you are empaneled there. So once you do some smaller arbitrations, and then institution will get the confidence of giving you higher value arbitrations, and you can also be exploring the higher opportunities internationally also. This online arbitration is available for domestic parties also. Even if there is a 1 lakh transaction, if there is an arbitration clause online, then the fees will be totally only 10,000 rupees or less than that. And another advantage in arbitration is winning party get the full cost of the lawyer, cost of the arbitral institution, everything will come as a part of the award. So that award can be enforced against the losing party anywhere in the world. In India means in India, outside means outside. Since India being the seat of arbitration, as I told you in the earlier case, that award can be enforced against the French party also. So without going physically to a place, you can use this online arbitration in favor of you as an arbitrator, potential arbitrator, and in favor of your clients also as your clients. Now, how it happens? Notice of arbitration. First, the party who is having the dispute, the Indian party who could not recover the $10,000 from the French party, will send an email to the arbitral institution explaining the case, providing the proof of arbitration clause, and ask for a request of arbitrator. Arbitrator can be appointed both the parties jointly from the panel which is available in the website. But normally parties don't agree on the same arbitrator, so the institution will appoint a neutral arbitrator. Then all the pleadings, claim, petition, statement of defense, any application, everything is filed online, uploaded. Whenever a new application is uploaded, immediately you will get a SMS. All the parties, all the counsels, all the consultants will get SMS from the institution, and also an email will come. So you can immediately log in and download the application and respond to that. Another important thing is in arbitration is it is not necessary that always lawyers have to represent the parties. It is anybody can represent the party, including the chartered accountants, including your company secretaries, because they are not called as advocates, they are called as party representatives. This is the practice applicable in India also, internationally also. So if you see in some construction contracts, lawyers are called only to make the legal submissions in the last. Till then, an experienced engineer will be handling the whole process. Likewise, depending on the complexity of the legal issues, you can engage a lawyer. Otherwise, you yourself can represent your parties in the arbitration. That is also possible. as I told you, IDAC India will have a panel of trained arbitrators. Claimant can also select 5 names at the time of giving notice and give to respondent. Both the parties can appoint, otherwise the institution will appoint. Here Indian law provides for one more safeguard to avoid biased arbitrators. When you enter as an arbitrator in a case, you have to make a declaration about your relationship with the parties as well as the counsel appearing in the party. If you are related, or if you have financial stakes, or if you are a consultant. That is why I was telling you, your client cannot nominate you as a party, as an arbitrator. Relationship with them. But Abhishek's party client can appoint other one as an arbitrator. Procedure happens. As I told you, login details are given to parties. So parties will upload using in the website, and normally in online arbitration process, no oral evidence hearings happens. Only the paper only arguments. It all will be filed by the documents, because all of you know well, it is normally a futile exercise of examining the witnesses in arbitration. Because these days all correspondence are happening in email and written correspondence in commercial contracts. So the requirement of examining a oral witness is very, very less. But if there is a requirement really to prove a particular fact orally, then the party can move an application before the arbitrator explaining the requirement and seek for a permission. Otherwise, parties will make the oral submissions, file the written arguments, and the award will come. Advantage of online arbitrations: convenience of the parties, lesser cost, faster resolution. There is no problem in enforceability. Online arbitration awards have the equal weightage of any physical arbitration award. So there is no difficulty with regard to enforcement. So enforcement is also easier. Now, advantage company secretary. Why you can be a good arbitrator? Company, you are a company law expert. Domain experts are used in arbitrations as arbitrators in many arbitrations. There are two things. One beauty of arbitration, I'll tell you. The arbitrator has the power to call somebody as an expert witness. For example, you are a company secretary, you are sitting as an arbitrator in a dispute which includes construction disputes. So some of the issues relating to construction you are not able to effectively understand. So you can call as an expert witness one engineer and clarify your doubts and decide on the basis of that. Same way, an engineer is sitting in an infrastructure arbitration. In that, some complex legal issues come up, or complex company law issues come up. So they can invite any of you as an expert witness also. That is also paid. That is another profession which many engineers are practicing. As an expert witness, they will prepare an expert witness report examining the issues. They will go and allow them to get cross-examined. Same way you can also. And you are all well versed with commercial law, so that is an advantage for you. You are doing day in, day out contract drafting, so you know the contract provisions, contract law also. And only thing is, what you have to understand is the arbitration framework, and it is also a simple mechanism in globally. If you read the Indian Arbitration and Conciliation Act, 90% it is similar to 63 countries in the world. Then you can imagine how easily you can understand the framework of global arbitration also. So that is all the best to all of you. Now you can ask if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for sharing your such a valuable information with us. So we have some questions that we are going to ask you one by one. So may I start, sir?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay.
I
So
will
now,
put one caveat now. In
okay.
case, because I forgot to bring my charger. In case if my
Okay.
the laptop goes out, I'll come to you on from my phone within a.
Okay, sir. Not an issue, sir. Okay. So the first question is, what is the scope of what is the scope of CS in arbitration and full-time career in it? I think you have this.
Yeah, I little bit explained, but initially you can take it as a part-time profession, and after some years, can you hear me?
Yeah.
After
Yes, sir.
some
Yes, sir.
years,
Yes, sir.
India will also be mature. If you go to Singapore, you can see name boards in the offices
Okay.
of lawyers, removing the lawyer board and putting as arbitrator. They don't take up any direct legal assignments. That same way, there are many other professionals, they don't practice anything else except arbitration. The day will come, till then you have to wait. But right now, to start with, you can start it like a part-time profession. Do some diplomas, master yourself, read arbitration related judgments, then over a period of time and help each one of you to the other person. Empanel yourself in all the arbitral institutions. They may also give you assignments.
Okay.
Then
So,
it is possible.
okay. The next question is about arbitration was introduced to save time and money of the parties and as well as for the court. But why do people tend to rely on the trial only?
I will
May-
blame mainly you and me only. Means
Okay.
whenever we only draft the contracts. But we also, many of us don't have a full understanding of arbitration. So we simply put jurisdiction of Delhi courts will be handling the disputes. Now you have understood the arbitration is a better mechanism. So we have to recommend to the parties, convince the parties to go for arbitration.
Means
We
we can.
professionals have to do that.
Yes. So we can say that there is in little awareness about arbitration in the people.
Yes, awareness is lower. So
Yes.
that awareness we have to help parties to get. Then it
Yes.
will be.
Okay. So now next question is force majeure clause can be invoked for making rental payments even though not specifically mentioned in the lease agreement executed between lessor and lessee? Sir,
As
are you
I told you, if
okay.
force majeure is not mentioned in a contract, it is not applicable. But only an argument can be taken up now. As I told you, as a frustration of contract or any provision of conditional and all those things. But still, only it may help you to just postpone the rental payments. It may not help you to actually waive the rentals for the force majeure period if you are using the property.
So now next question is about how to be an arbitrator. How to be an arbitrator?
Yeah, that is what you have to. I'll come on the other line.
Yes, sir.
Can you allow me in that?
Yes, sir. Hello.
Question's connecting again.
Hello.
Connecting.
Hello.
His audio is connecting again.
Yes. Now can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
So
Now, with
may
regard to the procedure for arbitrator, there is absolutely no procedure. Tomorrow, if a party wants you to be an arbitrator, they can nominate you. When they send the notice, they can say so and so, who is the company secretary, will be my nominee for the arbitrator. Same way, the opposite party can appoint their arbitrator. If it is a 3-member panel, if it is a sole arbitrator, then 2 parties have to agree. Otherwise, court or institution only will learn. So to start with, Some disturbance is there, I think. Now it's okay. Yeah. To start with, you have to empanel yourself in the arbitral institutions. You can also give your biodata in the High Court registry. They also maintain a professional's biodata. And you can recommend to your friends. If you have an arbitration matter, you can appoint one of your friends in the group. So he can appoint, he can recommend you as an arbitrator in one of the disputes of his client. Likewise, you can slowly build it up.
Sir, I have a question here.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Sir, like you already said that anyone can be arbitrator with the requisite number of years of experience. Then
Yes.
what is the use of this having a full-fledged course of arbitration like you suggested for this National School of Law?
Yeah, the advantage is, see, the advantage is if you know the procedure, if you know the law fully, then number one, it helps you to have a full command and your awards will be very good. When you are giving a decision, court will not interfere. So you are equipping yourself, number one. Number two, tomorrow if a third party is seeing your resume or profile, because many parties will be, once you, for example, if you apply to IDAC India, they put your profile in the website. So a third parties will be searching your profile. At that time, if they see you have a specialized diploma or some studies, experience in arbitration, then they will prefer those kind of profiles. So that is why I told you that you can study those.
That will be only a preference to one, not a prerequisite for being an arbitrator.
No, that is not an essential qualification. That is only to strengthen your profile.
Just to strengthen your profile. Got it. So, like I have already got to 20 years of experience and started this corporate law practice also. So I can get myself registered with the High Court registry to pursue this arbitration profession. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You can also apply to institutions. You can search in online and you can apply to institutions asking them to empanel you. Every institution will have different procedures. You can apply that way.
Based on my existing qualification of CSN LLB.
Yes.
So, I have another question here, sir. If everybody permit, I can ask this question is related to force majeure, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
So, see, I have a live case for me, sir. Like I got one of my property rented to one school, and there was a lock-in period for 4 years. The property I put on rent last year only. Now, due to this, and we have full-fledged force majeure clause also. But as you were previously, this pandemic was not used to be part of this foreclosure clause. We used to mention this riot, flood, act of God as a part of this foreclosure. So, and there was condition that for any early termination of a lease agreement by the lessee, he has to pay rent for the remaining lock-in period. Now, due to this pandemic, he has given a notice of termination. So this is one. Can he do that? And am I entitled for this remaining lock-in period?
In my opinion, you can claim for the remaining lock-in period. Number one. Number two is if at all they want an exclusion, they can only seek for a reduction or waiver during the COVID period. They cannot terminate the contract because it's a 4 years contract. Na? How much period remains?
It's another 9-year contract, but lock-in period was 4 years.
Yeah, that's what. 4 years. How much period is already exhausted?
1 year only, sir.
Then they cannot do that. Na?
Okay, so if they want to vacate the premises, they need to pay 3 years rent to me.
Yes.
Okay.
You can
demand. Having this force majeure clause in the agreement.
See, force majeure protects only during that force majeure event.
Yeah. Okay.
Beyond that, they cannot ask. They are asking for 3 years, which is totally wrong.
They are simply terminating the lease agreement.
That is wrong.
You want to vacate it? Okay. So, but even this Supreme Court has come up with a few cases where this lease agreement is not subject to this pandemic situation.
That is what,
So
they are telling is you cannot evict for non-payment of rental during this pandemic situation. That is what they are telling.
So what they
But
are,
it does
what,
not absolve them fully from their responsibility to pay.
okay, so I can sue them for this remaining period of rent.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Hello. Sir, may I audible to you?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Sir, next question is, what are the new amendments in the arbitration law?
There are many amendments. I can start from prescribing time. I told you already. If it is a fast track arbitration, the arbitration has to be completed within 6 months. A regular arbitration has to be completed within 1 year. And arbitrators cannot have any relationship with the parties or the councils. They have to make a declaration. And if the declaration shows some relationship, then that arbitrator can be removed from the arbitration assignment. These are the major amendments. And now they have also given a qualification in Schedule 8, which shows, which specifically shows company secretaries with 10-year experience can be arbitrators.
Same thing, sir. Same thing happen in that with that person who graduate from any university, who have an experience in a particular field, which is like law, finance.
Any graduate with 10-year experience in any field can become a arbitrator.
Arbitrator. Yeah. So thank you, sir. Our next question is how to define the mutual responsibilities in the event of force majeure. May I repeat, sir? Just I'm repeating again. How to define the mutual responsibilities in the event of force majeure.
So that's what I told you. Force majeure event may be a period,
Yes,
1 month, 2 months, or 1 year. Only during that period, the obligations of the parties can be waived if there is a provision in the contract. If there is no provision in the contract, only you can argue that this contract is frustrated. Otherwise, obligations have to be executed after the period, after the COVID period. Whenever COVID ends, tomorrow government announced that COVID ends after 6 months, then that obligations can be demanded by the opposite party. Now COVID period is over, you execute. Only this COVID event is excluded. Same way, any force majeure is only for that event. If there is a flood for 7 days,
Yes,
the 7 days period only gets excluded. They cannot say that, no, hereafter I will not enter the contract. I will enjoy the property, but I will not pay you money. That all they cannot.
So thank you so much, sir, for participating in the webinar of the ProConnect. So we are glad of yours, sir. So any member who have any questions, so may ask their questions. So please, member.
Yes. Yes.
Hello, member.
Hi, sir.
Yeah, please. So please answer. Please ask question one by one.
Sir,
I don't want to ask any question. I just wanted to say that thank you for enlightening about the arbitration. Actually, I was entering into a partnership and that I was drafting it about the arbitration clause. So it has helped me that what's the difference between one arbitrator and a three arbitrator and what are the pros and cons, how to draft it. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I will share my presentation also with you. You can circulate in your group so
Yes,
that
sir.
they can refer for any.
Hi, sir. This is Vishwanath. I have one query, sir. If you can please reply to that.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sir. Is it important to draft every contract. Say if my force major contract do not cover a particular event, say cyber attack, and some cyber attack happens, will this be considered as a force major event? So how important is defining each and every event in a force major clause?
No, it is better. It is always better to have a very large scope of force majeure clause. And in your definitions in the last sentences, you can also say that any other event which will be beyond the control of both the parties can be considered as force majeure. Such a expanded scope, if you have, then you can use it in the courts to get a remedy. Otherwise,
even if a particular event is not mentioned, sir, is it possible?
Yes, if you have a general clause also below that, explaining what other events can be taken as force majeure item, then that also will become a...
Understood, sir.
Yeah.
Who want to ask anything, so he can or she can ask. Hello. If any member asks anything to sir, so he or she can ask anything. I think,
So I
sir.
would say the session was wonderful, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Everybody is writing their comments in the comment box, just like session was wonderful.